And welcome to the First Time Homebuyers Podcast. I am one of your two co-hosts, Tom Sommers with Coldwell Banker Burnett in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and I'm joined by my co-host, Eric McKenna, with Remax Advanced in the Pittsburgh area. Eric, how are you today?
Super groovy, buddy. Super groovy.
I like that. Good. He's groovy, people. He's groovy, so we're going to get a lot out of him on this one.
That's right.
We are continuing this podcast after our basic of how to buy a home, all the steps, which you can find. We have lots of other ones for you that you can find on either Spreaker or on YouTube. This one, we're going to talk about another thing that was brought up in a recent purchase agreement with one of my clients. And we're going to talk about easements and encroachments and what the difference is between the two. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to start out on this one, Eric.
Absolutely.
An easement is something that comes on the title of the house that allows certain things to happen. So the most common is a utility easement, like they have an easement 10 feet onto your property from the road into the ditch that the electric company or a service utility can come on anytime they like, and they can trim trees, they can test their box, they can dig it up if they had to add wiring, whatever it might be. That's the most common. The other one that is not as common but is equally important is an easement for, say, like access to a park. You may be in one of those communities where you have access to a lake because you're backed up to it, but there's a public access right next to you. So there's a path that may be partially on your property, or you live in a small neighborhood where all the neighbors share the lake lot, so they have to walk on your property or near your property to get to the access of the lake. Neither of these are bad things. They're very common, but it's important that you understand what that easement actually is, because people have a tendency to take advantage of that. And we don't want to see that happen to you. So, deeded access is the one that's the most murky. I had a client last year that was purchasing a house, and they were purchasing the house for the land, the space, the huge outdoor shed, as well as the home, because they ran a home-based business. And I said, well, you know, it's good that you're getting the deeded access as well, because it's a great thing for resale. It's a beautiful lake and all of that. Well, it turns out that the sellers were trying to not sell deeded access to the lake, even though they were advertising it. They were trying to keep part of the deeded access for themselves and hide it from us, meaning that they had two parcels, and one parcel was the deeded access for both of them, and they were trying to maneuver their way around it. This turned into a real long battle, needless to say, and we ended up winning because that's what should have happened. But if we didn't have a title company that did their due diligence on this, it might have been missed. So it's important that you get these documents also to understand what your deeded access is, because if you walk down the road and there is the deeded access supposedly to the lake with a bunch of boats and, you know, a sandy beach, you got to make sure that every single person in that cul-de-sac or community has the same type of deeded access, because in this particular situation, of the 20 homes, 10 of them had the right to have a boat. 10 of them had the right to just use the beach. So you can't purchase a house with deeded access for the beach only and go down there and just decide you're going to put a boat on the launch. It isn't going to happen. So the devil's in the details, and like what Eric was saying in one of our earlier episodes about seller's disclosures and things not being filled out in your legal and all of that, the legal description, you need to know exactly where you stand and what the deeded piece means.
Absolutely right. I can only speak in my career. My career is not as expansive in years as the old man in this show, which is Tommy. so I can't. I can't. I got you there. I can't speak to the amount of deals where I've had to deal with this for
But I live in the land of 10,000 lakes.
Well, you
That's
do. You
the
do.
other thing. You've got 3 rivers.
But let me explain to you where it was part of a transaction I had, and it was a very interesting outcome. I was contracted to list a piece of property that was roughly around 25 acres, which in suburban Pittsburgh, in the suburbs, it's a pretty big parcel. The parcel was separated and also owned by an adjoining parcel in a cul-de-sac that had covenants. There was no actual deeded access to this property into the cul-de-sac. Basically, the gentleman who owned the house, the other property in the house in both pieces, figured that when he would go sell the property, he would just change the configuration of the boundaries of the two properties and provide access through his other house. And he didn't really understand why it became so difficult to sell this other large parcel. Well, and I was a younger agent, so, he kind of learned on this job. Well, agent after agent after agent informed me that, being that it was a verbal understanding that if someone bought this large parcel in the back, the front parcel owner, who happens to own both, will change the boundaries and let the access be part of the sale. The point was, without it being deeded access, without it already being established, it was almost near impossible conceptually to sell this other piece of property. The other thing is, the reason why this gentleman did not sell or did not carve up these two pieces of property and give that back property access was he was also trying to sell his property, his home, actually in the cul-de-sac. And had he formally given access, it would have reduced the value of his house. That was his theory, his philosophy. And being he would just, sell that property without giving the access. And now you've got a captive piece of property back there that no one can get to. So property values in general are affected by these deed accesses, easements, and everything else. And that, I guess, in general is what I'm trying to say. It can affect the value of a parcel based upon any encroachment or easements that are there. And it must be vetted out by your agent and you at the time of consideration before you buy. So important.
Yeah, and it seems like the snakiest stuff that I see is always wrapped around lake property and deeded access. So the minute you see that term, I want a red flag to go off and I want the hairs on your neck to stand up, because not always, but that's typically where you're going to find the bomb. There are also other things that happen, like in Minnesota, because we are the land of 10,000 lakes, where someone will own two parcels of land. And the back piece, like you were talking about, actually would be deeded access to the lake, but the other piece that they own is not. Now, they're selling the PIDs together. The reason that they aren't put together is because in Minnesota, if you keep two separate PIDs like that, your taxes are probably half of what they would be if the house was actually on the lake. So again, most people aren't out to rip you off, but you have to make sure that you have the proper legal description for both of the PIDs, or you could end up having a mess, because now all of a sudden you own a house, you can see the lake, but you physically can't get to it because something got screwed up. The other piece of this would be encroachments, because they both start with an E and it's very easy to get confused. An encroachment is something that is on your property that shouldn't be. The most common that I see would be somebody's garage is sticking 1 foot over your property line. In the city, that's very, very common, because let's face it, when homes were built in the early 1900s and everything was just kind of handwritten and they didn't have the plats and they were hand drawing them and all that, things get screwed up, and all of a sudden they built 40 homes there, like, everything's
Welcome
like
to Pittsburgh. Welcome to Pittsburgh.
Well, there you go. So it's not a bad thing, but again, you want to make sure that if you do have any encroachments, that you understand exactly what they are and how much they are, because if they are more than a couple of feet, then it's something that you may want to consult like a real estate attorney for your rights to make sure that this is okay. Because again, we as agents, as well as the closers and title people, we can't give you any legal advice. Most of this is pretty common sense. We can work it out for you when we know that there's a problem. But in some cases, especially where there's an encroachment, you may want to consult an attorney, especially if it's someone who's built their garage 2 or 3, 4 feet over your lot, full well knowing they did, just because they were too lazy to get any kind of a survey. So those are the types of things that we walk through on a daily basis as realtors to help you out. Anything else you want to share that we didn't cover?
No, that's pretty encompassing. I mean, we could talk about this for hours because there's so many examples of it.
Yeah.
But essentially, again, lean on your realtor.
Yeah.
Get a great closing company. A realtor is going to know. Hopefully, the seller is going to explain all of this in the seller disclosure, so you're going to get a good heads up on it. But again, don't rely on that entirely. Make sure your closing company is solid, and if your realtor has any doubts, sometimes the best couple $100 you'll spend will be an attorney to come in and do a brief analysis.
Yeah, and also too, please take this with a grain of salt. The reason we do these shows, obviously, is we're trying to find business. That's what we're doing. We want to work with you. We want to help you buy houses. We want to help you sell houses in our respective areas. But we also truly do care. We want you to be informed. So don't be overwhelmed. You don't have to remember all of this stuff and go into looking at houses with all this information. It's here for you to download and listen to if it's applicable for you. Right. It's just to give you a little sense of what everything is so that you're better informed and you don't feel intimidated or uncomfortable in the process. It's like if you're going into to get a service, like a haircut, okay, and you've been going to a barber.
Watch yourself there.
You're going in for a shave.
I remember that.
Yeah. So you're going in for a haircut, right? And you've gone to a barber for 25 years, and he decides that he's going to retire. So now you're looking for a new place to get your haircut, and you go into a salon. Okay. Well, for a lot of people, that can be horribly intimidating when you're sitting in the lobby waiting. You know what I mean? And that's what this is. We don't want you to be intimidated when you're working on the process of buying a house. It shouldn't be scary. Yeah, you're going to be nervous, but we want you to have fun with it.
Absolutely right.
Sorry about that, dude.
Yeah, it's all right. Ball jokes and me are just synonymous.
But it wasn't. It was just the first thing that popped into my head. You know, it is what it is.
Okay, Mr. Full Haircut there, I see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so anyways, I hope that this was another episode that helped you guys out. Thank you again for your support and your downloads and your feedback, and thank you for sending us emails. We really do appreciate it, and we look forward to doing these. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, you know where to find us. We are available. Again, if you're looking for an agent in the Pittsburgh area that will do a incredible job for you, that would be Eric McKenna. Eric sells, and he does. He sells. If you're in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area, give me a call. I'm here for you. If there is a place you are living that is not one of those two places and you need a realtor, call us. We'll help you find one for free of charge. We will find the right agent that will work for you, that will work their butt off. So don't hesitate to call. I think that's about all I got.
That's it. Everybody stay super groovy, and we'll see you next week.
There you go. Sounds like,
all right.
I don't know. What's his name? Not Bobby Brady. Greg Brady. There you go.
Greg Brady. On that note, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Okay, now listen.